I didn't exactly love version 1 or 2 of the Aero Glide, but sometimes it takes a few iterations before a shoe really finds its groove. This is the Salomon Aero Glide 3, and with a completely new foam and a redesigned upper, it's time to see the third time can be a charm. Yo, what's going on? My name is Kofuzi and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews running shoes on YouTube. And today I want to talk to you guys about the Salomon Aero Glide 3. But before I give you my thoughts on this shoe, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that was provided to me for the purpose of review, so I did not have to pay for these shoes. However, nobody's paying me to make this video or to include their brand in this video, and no one's gonna get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Aero Glide 3, and let's start with the specs. This is a 40mm stack height shoe with an 8mm drop, giving us 32mm of stack height of forefoot. Now the foam that they're using this year is something that is called Energy Foam Evo. It's a beaded foam. I wanna say it's a beaded TPU, but I don't know specifically for sure what it is. But it's very different than the foam that we saw last year in the Aero Glide 1 and in the Aero Glide 2. The other main thing that I want to talk about in terms of changes from prior iterations of the foam, and just something else that I want to point out, is that there's a lot of cutouts and design elements going on the side of the midsole, and there's a huge scoop through the center of the shoe that you could see when you're looking at it from the bottom. And these, I think, are more than just decorations. Now, comparing it back again to what we saw in the Aero Glide 1 and 2, this was more of a big slab of midsole foam. And this year, with all these cutouts and cutaways, what we're getting is kind of controlled compression, and also some of these channels and cavities give the foam that's underneath your foot somewhere to go when you're pushing down on it, so it's not always pushing directly against the ground, and the foam is getting to do a little bit more work. And while we're down here looking at the bottom of the shoe, let's check out the rubber covers that we see here. Salomon is using their Road Conta Grip, which is a very durable material, but also a very tacky, very grippy material. And where there is rubber coverage on this shoe, it is very thick. Now, when I was in Boulder learning about this shoe from Salomon, I had a chance to talk to some of the product team and the design team, and they spent a lot of time talking about this seam, this fin that's on the back of the shoe. Whenever possible, they tried to move any of the seams that might have been on the interior of the shoe that typically has to get covered up by thicker material or additional padding. They moved all of that stuff to the outside, so there's kind of less that can potentially rub up against the back of your foot or cause any irritation. I'm not sure that I really notice a huge difference in terms of moving certain elements of the construction to the exterior versus the interior, but the attention to detail that they have put to the comfort of the shoe is something that I notice. I feel like this shoe just fits a lot better on my foot than most Salomon shoes tend to fit. There's almost a feeling like it's a different last or a different mold that they're using to shape this shoe. I feel like there's more volume in the toe box. It's taller in terms of what's on top of my toes. And also I feel like sometimes that toe area of the shoe cuts in just a little bit too quickly, but this shoe, I feel like there's plenty of room for my toe, and it's a fit that I wish that Salomon would adopt across more of its running shoes, because I feel like this one really gets it right. The tongue isn't gusseted, but it is sewn in to a relatively high extent, so it's not gonna really flop around too much on you. And it is kind of unusually tall, which I think is kind of a thing that Salomon always tends to do. They really like to make very long tongues, but otherwise it feels very comfortable. The entire upper is light, it's breathable, it's airy, it feels great on foot, and I think they did a fantastic job with the redesign. And the total weight for this shoe comes in at 8.6 ounces and 243 grams. Now that we've talked about what the shoe is like on paper, let's talk about what it's like on the road. The Salomon Aero Glide 3 is a significant departure for Salomon, and I love it. The foam is really fun, really bouncy, and it's livelier than what I've typically experienced from Salomon road shoes in the past. It's not a squishy or even a mushy foam though, and I think that that's a good thing because I think it would be a very dissonant experience to get from Salomon, especially if you've been a Salomon fan over the years. So it's a bit more firm than I would ideally prefer, but not every shoe has to be about me and cater to all of my preferences. But even though it's not my exact favorite type of shoe personally, I do think that this is a really excellent offering. The shoe is very peppy, it's very responsive. I'm getting a lot of ping every time the shoe bounces off of the ground and gets into that next stride. And it's a shoe that also can just eat up the miles. It's still very comfortable that you could take it for your long run. And at the same time, its lightweight makes it suitable for a lot of pace versatility, whether it's a fartlek or a light tempo workout. I think that this is a shoe that's going to be very eager to pick up the pace. The Salomon Aero Glide 3 is the best yet of the franchise, and I'm thrilled that Salomon Road is willing to take some risks and step outside of the typical Salomon comfort zone. I think that those risks are rewarded here because they made a very excellent daily trainer. Now let's wrap up the video by going over the buying guide, and we'll also discuss some of the alternatives in the marketplace. The Salomon Aero Glide 3 is a fun and fast daily trainer whose lightweight makes it an excellent option for easy runs, tempo workouts, and fartleks. I think it's a little bit too firm to really be your recovery run shoe or very, very easy day shoe, but the shoe is comfortable enough that it can be a great option for your long runs. Now, Salomon lists this as a max cushion shoe, and I think this is a great example of in the modern era of running shoes where stack height numbers and heel drop isn't enough on their own to tell you what a shoe is really like. Because even though the shoe is tall, it doesn't really give me a max cushion sensation. And that's not just an arbitrary distinction. It's not just about vibes. I think here's where it really makes a difference, because the Aero Glide 3 comes in at $160. And while that didn't change in terms of pricing from last year, I think that $160 is a little bit expensive for a daily trainer, even a very good one. It is, however, a pretty good price for a max cushion shoe. So I think the categories are really important in terms of whether or not the pricing is right for this shoe. Now, you can try to maybe save a couple of dollars to get into the Salomon Aero Glide by looking at some prior versions, but this version 2 is a very different shoe from what we're seeing in Salomon Aero Glide 3. So unless you really love the way Salomon Road shoes have been in the past, I really wouldn't recommend version 2. So I think now it's a good time to look at some of the other options that exist there on the marketplace. And I think the first shoe that I want to talk about when comparing against the Aero Glide 3 is not a shoe that I think is all that similar, but it's something that is going to come to mind because of the beaded nature of the midsole foam. And that shoe is from Adidas. This is the Ultraboost 5X. And even though these shoes have very similar stack heights and other paper stats, the Ultraboost 5X is actually a shorter shoe in terms of stack height. I think the experiences you're getting from these shoes are very different. The boost, or more precisely, the light boost that's in the Ultraboost 5X is a lot more dense. It's also a bit heavier, and overall the shoe is a lot more stable of an experience. I'm getting a much more relaxed sensation when I'm in the Ultraboost 5X that makes me really not want to take it for anything that requires a pace change or running very quickly. But if this was a day where I wanted to just really take it easy on the run and treat myself, then the Ultraboost 5X is what I would reach for. Ultraboost is always a bit on the expensive side because of the way it's crossed over into street style, but this shoe comes in at $180, so quite a bit more expensive than the Aero Glide 3, but because the 5X has been out for a while, you can find it on discount for $135, so quite a bit cheaper than what the Aero Glide 3 is offering, but they are very different experiences, so I don't think this is a really great head-to-head competitor, but something that I think we needed to talk about what max cushion really means and how variable the beaded foam experience can be. Now, the next shoe I think is gonna be, I think, closer to the Ultraboost than it is going to be the Aero Glide, but it's another shoe that I think kind of illustrates a very similar point. Another shoe that I think people are naturally going to look at when they're thinking about the Aero Glide 3. This is the Triumph 22. Again, two shoes that have tall stack heights. I think the Triumph 22 is actually the shortest of the three shoes that we've talked about so far. And they both use beaded foams, and they're approaching comfort, but doing it in different ways. With the Saucony, the comfort that they're trying to achieve in the upper is with a bunch of puffy memory foam style padding. And the Triumph 22 gives a pure max cushion experience. The footprint of this shoe is exceptionally wide, and so it's like almost like you've got your elbows out and you're preventing yourself from being tipped over one way or the other when you are in the Triumph 22. So it's a very stout, stable experience. That shoe does come in at $160, so I think that's where kind of this $160 price point is coming in. I feel like that's the state of the market if you're delivering a max cushion experience. Something that I think, though, that is the closest to what the Aero Glide 3 is offering that is also a beaded foam is coming from Saucony, though, and that is the sibling to the Triumph 22, and it's the Ride 18. I feel like these are probably the two closest shoes that I can think of in terms of what the experience is on the road. They both use beaded foams. They both have comfortable uppers. Again, there's differences in philosophy in terms of how to approach comfort in the upper, but in terms of the underfoot experience, I think that these two shoes are getting to very similar points. There's a liveliness, there's a bounciness and pep to what you're seeing in the Saucony Ride 18. It's a shoe that I didn't do a full review on, and now I'm kind of regretting it because I'm finding that I really like the Ride 18. It's a big departure from what the Ride has been in the past, and I really like the direction that it's going. It's becoming much more modern while still delivering a slightly on the firm side experience that the Ride franchise has been known for a very long time. A lot of the kind of same things that I could say for what's going on in the Aero Glide 3. The Ride 18, though, is a bit more chill, and it is a bit more stable, and it is a lot more puffy, so there are some slight differences and things that would make me choose one versus the other depending on what I was looking for in a shoe. But I think that in terms of like what they're trying to deliver, I think they're trying to deliver a very similar experience. And the important thing about this shoe is that it comes in at $140, which I think is these days, unfortunately, pretty standard for modern flagship daily trainers. And that's really where I feel the Aero Glide 3 fits in. It's a little bit on the taller side for a daily trainer, but it's kind of a more cushioned daily trainer, but it's in spirit a daily trainer, something that you use for a lot of different kinds of runs on a lot of different days of the week. And that $160 price point is about $20 more expensive than I'd ideally like to see. So those are my thoughts on the Aero Glide 3. I'm really loving the direction Salomon's going with this one, and I'm excited for what it can mean in other Salomon road shoes in the future. If you have any questions about this shoe or any of the shoes that I talked about today, feel free to put them in the comments down below, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Mondays and Thursdays over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel. I'd love to see you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?